It deals with the alter ego of Richard Pryor, a character of his called Mudbone. And it's actually a true story about this night. And actually some of the best lines in this are really from Richard Pryor. So this is called The Night Richard Pryor Met Mudbone. And it's from the book of the samurai, the Hagakure. An epigraph reads, "It is spiritless to think you cannot attain to that which you have seen and heard the masters attain. The masters are men, you are also a man." The moon hung orange as any sun just before it faces evening, like a flaming breast in the sky, calling my name. And I walked out under it and rubbed the moonlight all over my face and hands the way the old folks used to do with sunlight. On Wednesdays, because back in those times, the hard times, harder than any of this shit we're faced with today, they said the only time the sun came out was on Wednesday if you were lucky, and a boy had to get his ass up early just to catch that. Well, it was a day like that I'm about to tell you about. A day when all I could see were the mismatched symbols on the slot machine of my life. Surprisingly, this isn't a story about a woman. All my relationships with women were one long-leg story in high heels. But I'm not even trying to get to sex here for once. What I'm trying to say is when your foot brushes a woman's toes under the sheets, when you feel her breath on the back of your neck, turning your spine into a tall building. When your eyes meet hers while making love, you know you're looking at the truth. The truth is what I found whenever I thought life could prove better than the craps game I was born into. Although it's always just a roll of the dice, like the time in Vegas when I walked out on stage half high, half drunk, in '68, and there sat Dean Martin in the front row, drink in one hand, and a half burnt out cigarette in his other cuff-linked hand. And I looked at his seal-hide hair and his wax figure of a face, and the rest of the audience went out of focus. All the voices were put on mute. All I could hear was Dino stirring the ice in his drink, and I asked myself, what the fuck am I doing here? My skinny black ass from Peoria, Illinois. I walked out on stage and a switch flipped off inside my head. The room went white. My agent told me like in the movies, man, told me on the phone, real chill like, he said, I'd never work in this life again. But then I realized it wasn't neon marquees, gangsters, or headline acts I was afraid of. It was me. I spent years imitating Bill Cosby, telling jokes that fit me like a suit 2 sizes too big. I struck a sad figure on stage, even when I was good. Don Rickles came up to me once and said, "What a great show. It's amazing how much you sound like Cosby." And then I wondered if everyone else could tell I had climbed inside his skin and zipped him up. I wondered who else would unzip my monologue and find me there, trembling. After Vegas, I headed to New York and got to open for Miles Davis at the Village Gate. And Miles looked through me just like Rickles had, but he did something that was as beautiful as his music. Miles knew I was looking for a way to fall off the planet's edge, getting high and wanting more. So one night, as I sat drinking in my dressing room, the MC comes in right before curtain and tells me Miles changed the lineup. I thought I was fired, man. But Miles decided that he was going to open for me. Do you know what a bad motherfucker you got to be to have Miles Davis open for you? That's like God, Jack. So I go out on stage, and as I'm about to go into my best Bill Cosby impression, I see this old man with coal-colored skin sitting at the edge of the stage. He's looking at me like, well, boy, let's see what you got. And I don't want to hear none of that Bill Cosby shit either. And he said, tell them about Badass Oil Well, about the wino, or about Miss Rudolph, the hoodoo lady. How she had one titty that had an eye tattooed on it, and another that had a mouth, and how when that one titty blew a kiss and the other winked, you knew for the first time you had smoked enough of that shit. I asked the old man his name, and he said, they call me Mudbone. I was born in Tupelo, Mississippi. I looked at him sideways, and he said, that's a city, boy. I was born there a long time ago. So long ago, ain't worth remembering when exactly, because after a certain while, it's just a long time ago. Like me, I could tell he died many times and had some stories to tell. You don't live this long being a fool. There's a whole lot of wise young men deader than a motherfucker, he said. Yes, I thought, my meditations on death keep me alive too. Death would show up from time to time like a distant relative who thought I had been away too long. The funny thing is, I spent years searching, laughing on the tip of a needle, crying between a woman's legs, imitating other people's work just to come back to a man who had been there all along saying, "Hey, look over here at me." But I had ignored him, thinking he didn't have anything to say. So I stood there with a cigarette throbbing in one hand and a microphone rocking in the other. And I told them about the fallen angels of my life, and I grabbed a handful of the glow from the spotlights, rubbed it all over my body, right on stage, naked, in front of everybody. And I smiled, and they smiled back, as the light, growing brighter now from the rafters, turned to sunshine. In Quantum Lyrics, I'm dealing with some strange poems. Some of these poems are in the voice of DC Comics superheroes, and trying to toggle between male vulnerability and the public persona. And so this first poem is in the voice of the Flash, who has got the power to run the speed of light. So this is from DC Comics number 44, November 1990. Never look back, Flash, or life might be gaining on you. This is called The Flash Reverses Time. When I'm running across the city on the crowded streets to home, when in a blur the grass turns brown beneath my feet, the asphalt steams under every step, and the maple leaves sway on the branches in my wake, and the people look in that bewildered way in my direction, I imagine walking slowly into my past among them at a pace at which we can look one another in the eye and begin to make changes in the future from our memories of the past. The bottom of a bottomless well, you may think, but why not dream a little? Our past doesn't contradict our future. There's swatches of the same fabric stretching across our minds, one image sewn into another, like the relationship between a foot and a boot, covariant in space and time. One moves along with the other, like an actor in a shadow play, like a streak of scarlet light across the skyline of your city, sweeping the debris which is simply confetti, candy wrappers, a can of soda, all the experience of a day discarded and now picked up, even down to the youthful screams of play that put smiles on the faces of the adults who hear remnants of their own voices through a doorway leading back to a sunrise they faintly remember.